Okay, there's also one from last time. I did it last night too, or not last night. Yeah, it was last night. All right, so I'm going to accept the agreement. If you don't accept the agreement, your install is over at this point, so you need to do that. I'm going to do next. And I think to hit next, there it goes. When we do this, we want to do complete. Right, we want to do the complete one. We don't want to select things. So I'm just going to do complete. I'm going to do next. And I'm going to click in install. And I think it's going to hang here until no community server. So go to the MongoDB. Let's see, download center. I mean, you could go there. Where is the installer here? Oh, I closed the whole virtual. That's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to show you probably have this. I'll come to yours. So you want to give permission, and then it should start installing. And it shouldn't take very long. Anybody need help getting there? And Mongo should install on anything. So if you wanted it, there should be. I think it's probably behind the. And last time I did this, it hung a little bit right here, but it'll eventually break through. Yeah, they're all hanging about the same. So.
I'm not sure. Usually you get the. When he downloads it and he hits open and it just goes to his.
Oh, this is because this is.
Oh. MongoDB not running on the provided hosting server.
Yeah, go ahead. So go ahead and install the Compass too. I'll show you what that is. That's new. It isn't even asking me. There it is. Compass is being installed. Compass is a GUI. Not a very good one, but it's a GUI. I think we'll do a mixture of it and the command line when we actually do it. So I swear you had the finish, but I didn't see the. All right, so one of the things you have to do is scroll down to the bottom of this and agree. Okay, there's a couple of other things we have to do, but I'll give it a minute. Okay. Once they're pretty well all down, I will show you. There's a couple of little things we need to do that are weird. I'm going to maximize this too because they're not maximized right now. This first page here is just telling you kind of how to maneuver, how to manipulate the compass. This GUI was not here the last time I taught Mongo. It's a new thing. I've played with it a little. Did I close the magnifier? I'm going to zoom up, but you know what? I might want to. Plus, but I want to turn it into zoom increments. Let's do this at 50%. I think that's better. All right, so if you close this front thing, and it gives you some other things here, so I'm going to say start using Compass. If you try to connect right now, it'll fail. And I'll show you what to do about that in just a second. You don't have to put it there. Get you there. Get you there. Get you there. I don't know, that is a little very good. I hope it doesn't crash in the middle and try to update things. There's just although it's installed. All right, let me show you the next step and then I'll come and help the people that don't have it. So in order to run the server, you have to start the server. And I want to show you where the server is. And I'm going to show you an easy way to do it. In the past, I always just had people run to it in the command line, but it's a long path. But what we're going to do is we're going to make a shortcut on the desktop. So this is to Compass, but I'm going to do right-click, new, shortcut. And then it gives me this thing where I can go for a path. So I'm going to browse. I want this PC. I want local disk C, program files, not the 86, but program files, MongoDB. We want to go down into bin, and we want MongoD. MongoD is the actual server. So you want me to walk that path again?
Yes.
So let me find the shortcut. Did I kill the shortcut when I did that? Looks like it. So I'm going to right click, new, shortcut. Actually, before we do that, so I just forgot two things. I'm going to go to the file folder. I'm going to go to this PC. I'm going to go to C drive. And I'm going to add two folders here. I forgot to do this, but it won't work if I don't add these folders. And I don't know why the install doesn't happen. It never made sense to me. I am going to right click and I'm going to do new folder. And this one will be called data. Inside of data, so I just did a new folder and renamed it data, right? Double click that to go inside there, and I'm going to create a new folder. So I right click, new folder, and it's going to be DB. And I'm going to right click, new folder, and I'm going to name it log. So I'm going back up. You want a new folder called data, and it's on C drive. It's just C:\data. And inside of data, you want DB and log. And your database files will be in this folder. Okay, it will be in DB. And if you don't do this, at least in the past, and I suspect still, it will crash when you try to run. And log, L-O-G.
That's so weird.
Yeah, I don't know why the install doesn't put those folders there. Maybe the install, I don't know. And I don't know on a Mac where those go.
Can't figure that out myself.
Yeah. It's in a, people have done it successfully on a Mac, so I know it's doable. I just don't know where the files go. Okay. So, everybody got that? I'll come around. I'll make sure everybody's got it. But data on the C drive. And again, the way you could create a new folder is right-click and do new and then choose folder. Another way you could do this is with a command prompt. You just create directory or cdir, you know. I think it's mdir, make directory. All right, so let's do what I was going to do first. I'm going to do right-click, new, shortcut. And this one's on the desktop. So right-click, new, shortcut. And then I'm going to browse to the folder. Is this big enough to see, or should I go up another level? It's big enough for, how about from way back? Okay. So I'm going to do this PC, and you want to go to local disk C. Okay. And then you want to go to program files. There's a MongoDB there. And you want to go into bin. So we want MongoD. MongoD is the actual server. Does that make sense? So I'm going to do OK. And it makes a shortcut, once I say next, to there, so you don't have to go find it every time. You could, I mean, in the past I just had people navigate to it at the command line, but it is a bit of a pain. If you double click it, it will start the server. This is the server being started. And you just, this needs to stay open, right, while you're working. If you close this window, you shut off the server. at the very bottom, I don't know if you can see it, but it says it's waiting for connections. So if I come into here and I say connect, it actually will connect this time. And there's two databases built into it. There's an admin and a local database. We'll play with this in a moment. This is the GUI. It's not a very good GUI, but yeah.
You figure out where it goes, any folders?
Looks like it stops. If worse comes to worse, maybe we'll install it on the underlying machine. So, okay. I think the other thing that you might want a shortcut to is, so I'm going to do a new shortcut. Same path. So this PC, C drive, program files, MongoDB, and you want to go down into bin, and you want Mongo. Just Mongo. Mongo is the console client for this. So if I do, did that go away too? Or is it just down here? MongoD, magnifier. Let's do Mongo again. There it goes. Don't know why it went away last time. This is what the console looks like. And basically what you do here is you just, and I could make the fonts bigger this. So I could say like use local. And it would switch to local. Yeah, this is sort of a command line. MongoD. So Mongo, just Mongo and MongoD. MongoD is the server, and Mongo is the command line client for Mongo. It's basically with it, you can do all the stuff you can do with it with this, but a little bit more complicated. So I'm going to just real quickly let's kind of just leave this up. In terms of the install assignment, You could take a picture of this and turn it in, or for that matter, this, just this to show that it's up and running. Both of those show that it's been installed. And as I said, I'll get you on somebody before we're done. You can try to troubleshoot that. Yours is working with it. So you could do those for the screenshot just to say that, yes, I've got Mongo installed. I don't know that either of these have any kind of startup log, and then the admin doesn't have anything in it. So I am going to bring up the PowerPoint about NoSQL, and then we'll play with it for a little bit, and then we'll call it good until next week. So yeah.
Okay. Boom. 10 points.
I have no idea what I was thinking there. Just like I have no idea what yours is not. So this is the NoSQL PowerPoint here. Let me do that, and then we'll do a little, maybe while we do this, let's get you running the thing. Let's try to go out of the. So let's try. All right, so I'm going to do anyway this NoSQL PowerPoint, and I'm just going to I'm going to unzoom. And then do a show. Still hasn't asked for permission? That is weird. Yeah, that is so weird. We'll figure it out. We'll make it work somehow. All right. So NoSQL is a lot different than the databases we've been working with. How many of you worked with Mongo or NoSQL? Okay. It's very different. It's not structured in tables or rows. It's not relational. It doesn't have tables as such. They call it, it's. Some people say it's not. Some say it's not only SQL instead of not just SQL, but it's very different. It's based on JavaScript rather than using the SQL language. How many of you have done JavaScript? A little bit, JSON? It's basically just JavaScript. It's not hard. These are fairly new. NoSQL databases are within the last 5 years or so, but they're growing really rapidly. If you think about it, the SQL databases have been around since the 1970s. So they've had a long time to mature, and they're basically everywhere, and they're really good for, business data, transactional data, things like that. So these are fairly new. They can interact with SQL databases, but in general, they don't have a schema, which means they don't have a structure. A lot of programmers really like NoSQL database because when you're doing an SQL database, a relational database, it can take, we really speeded up the process, and it took us a couple weeks, right? It can take months to get a really well-designed relational database. With NoSQL, you can just run with it. There are disadvantages to that too. We'll talk about that. In a relational database, everybody has the same structure, right? They have the same columns, and each column has a set data type. The records in a collection in a NoSQL database can have different structures. They don't have to have the same structure. You want them to have similar structure, or else, what's the point, I guess? But they can vary. So if something has a whole bunch of sub fields that are relevant, you can put them in, and if they don't, you can leave them out. It's a lot looser. They don't enforce referential integrity, and information can be repeated in several places. In a relational database, you want to eliminate repetition, and there are good reasons for that. So in NoSQL, you can repeat things all over the place, but you have the same problems. If you spell it differently in one place, you may not get it back with the same, query. There are no joins, right? So you can't combine tables by keys. They do have keys, but it doesn't create any kind of relationship with the keys. You could, in your own software, imitate that, right? If you were writing your program in Python or something, you could do that. But it's not built into the database. So NoSQL databases can be fast. Part of the reason why they can be fast is that they don't have any referential integrity things to check. They don't have to check foreign keys. They don't have to check permissions, all sorts of different things. They're very flexible, and they're really good at collecting information that doesn't fit neatly into regular traditional databases. So like social media. If you think about Facebook or Twitter or something, and you go up there, you got video, you got pictures, you got text, you got hyperlinks, you got all sorts of different things, and each one could have a different combination of those things. It makes it very difficult to write it to like a regular relational database. NoSQL is really good at just capturing that kind of stuff. Just getting a feed from Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or whatever you're working with. They're easily distributed. One of the things you can do with NoSQL is you can spread the files out. There's a thing called sharding. It basically means that your files are spread all over the internet, right? Hundreds of databases files wherever you want, maybe thousands of them. That makes it so it can be really fast and really easy to grow. With a relational database, when you want to grow a database, you buy a bigger hard drive. With this, you can just spread it across the internet. They're often faster to develop and deploy, like I said, than relational databases. So they have some big disadvantages too. Because they don't enforce relational integrities, they have all the problems and risks of redundancy. Again, you might have the same record in a dozen different places, but you might have been careless typing it. There's nothing to protect you from that, and it makes it so sometimes your queries aren't too accurate. Another thing is, because of the way the files can be distributed, this isn't so much a problem on a standalone like we're going to have, but if you've got it spread across the internet, they never guarantee that they're going to return everything. They actually, have you guys heard of Hadoop? No, that's okay. It's basically a logical structure, a query structure that's based on what Google wrote for their own searches. And what it does is it goes out and hits as many data points as it can in a limited amount of time and returns all the data it can. It's a way of doing as broad and big a query in as short amount of time as possible. But if there's anything that gives it any kind of delay, it just ignores it, right? So it's not going to necessarily pull back all the data. It's only going to pull back the data that it can get in a reasonable amount of time. Does that make sense? That's fine if you're querying social media and you're trying to get broad trends and things. It would be disastrous if you were trying to use that for accounting. Right? So relational databases are much better for a lot of traditional business needs. They do not guarantee ACID. We never talked about ACID transactions. Has anybody heard that term before outside the context of LSD? Anyway? So ACID means it's atomic. That means that it's all one thing, basically. The entire transaction is processed as a whole. It's consistent, means it'll always return the same answer. It's isolated from other transactions, and it's durable in the sense that if you do a query 10 minutes from now or 2 days from now, it'll have the same answer. Right? Relational databases are designed to make this come about. Make sure that every query you do has these properties. That is not true of a NoSQL database. You can, if you ask the same question twice in a couple hours difference, you might get different answers. So, you have it. I think we set up as introduction. Right, I think it just really that might have happened. There it is. Yeah. All right. So anyway, there are drawbacks to NoSQL. NoSQL is really where it's really come into its fore. Again, is for collecting all that kinds of data that doesn't fit really well into SQL databases, and big data. You know, when they talk about big data, NoSQL, again, because of the way it can expand and how, because you don't have to create a structure for the data, you can gather tons of stuff, right? And then there are ways to query it. So it's really useful for big data. So there are some different flavors of NoSQL. There's key value pairs, which Mongo is kind of a combination of key value and document database. Key value pairs, you guys know, because JSON is essentially key value. Key is the name of your field, and then you have a colon in the value. Key colon value, key colon value, all inside of curly braces. That's essentially what a JSON file looks like. JSON, by the way, stands for JavaScript Object Notation. Though purists will argue that it's not an object. I'm not worried about that. I am not. I've looked at column family stores, and I have no idea what they're doing. They treat a column as a table. So instead of having a row with multiple columns, you have one object that has all of the values for that one column, and then you have another object that has all the values for another column. Does that make sense? It's a little bit weird. So all of your product names might be in one column and all your prices in another column, and they'd be in separate objects. It's hard for me to explain this because I don't understand it. Document databases are kind of, again, Mongo, where you've got the documents being the JSON objects that are stored like documents inside of a collection. These, as I said, Mongo is kind of a combination of those. Graph databases are pretty neat. Anybody ever seen? If you put in the data, you can declare certain fields. Again, it's still this object key value pairs, but you can declare that certain values are nodes, and it'll map the nodes. It'll create a matrix where it draws lines between the different nodes. It actually can be really interesting. It's the kind of thing, an example would be if you wanted to take two random people in Facebook and see what kind of connections existed between them. It could map that out and give you an actual pictorial map of that based on the data. So those are actually really neat kinds of databases. They basically just draw lines between relationships within the data. You have to kind of predefine what constitutes a relationship. But as I said, they're kind of neat. There's a link here if you want to look at more about the types of NoSQL databases. Permission again. Oh, you have that permissions to do folders. All right, so Mongo is one of the most popular ones. It's free. It's one of the oldest ones too, which doesn't mean that it's really old. Okay. Hopefully we can do password. Yeah, DB. Again. Did you have to get permission for the folders? What does she have to go get? All right. So main interfaces, the command line, there is the new Compass one. And as I said, that is new. We talked about starting MongoD. Hopefully you can do that without permission over there. I don't know if it'll let you do the, anyway. So I used an example of a text store. So it uses JSON, and here's a real simple example of JSON. So you have the curly braces. Those mark the beginning and end of the object. Underscore ID is a built-in field, and I gave it a value of 1, but it will give you, if you don't give it a value and if you don't declare it, it'll create an ID field with its own number. The number won't be like 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, though. It's more like a 12-digit number. So this is the key, and then the value, key, value, right? Things need to be quoted, commas after this, and it can be much more complex than this. They can be, you can have objects inside of other objects. You can have arrays of things. You know, as I said, it can get really much more complex.
Can you make 2 objects inside the same semicolons?
So typically,
Or is it braces, I mean?
you can have, if you want multiple objects, notice this is inserting multiple objects. There's square brackets. So the square brackets is like an array, and then each one of these is a separate object inside of the, yeah. This is in the command line. I need to play with the Compass more to get a feel. I'll show you how to do it in the Compass. It's a little bit different, but it's the same principle. But yeah, you can insert a whole array at once. Notice how there's a command here that says insert. Collections are collections of objects. They're just, they're kind of like tables, but kind of not too. These are, so this is just find. Find is like select star from, right? It gives you everything. This is a more complicated query. I'm not going to worry about it too much. I think that's the last slide too. We will go over those. I mean, we'll do some of these things. So I'm going to close the slideshow. I'm going to show you one other thing, and this is purely if you're interested. So I am going to go to, let's do it up here, Conger Prep. .blogspot, and I think I have a link to this, but if not, I will make one. .com, and it's another blog. This is a blog where I do things that are more a little bit deeper. But I wanted to show you. I have first steps with NoSQL. And it goes through setting up Mongo and using the command shell, talks about inserting records, talks about doing a couple of different queries where you're choosing a different person. It has a couple of administrative commands, etc. And we'll go over some of these. This goes a little farther than you want. And then there's a second one, Mongo Database 2, where it does like it lists all these products and it goes through inserting those and does some queries, does an update, does some calculations, and adds a second collection. After that, it starts to get a little bit beyond, but I used PyMongo and started writing Python code to talk to the Mongo database. Again, that's beyond what we're going to do in the class, but you can look at it. There's some more PyMongo, Mongo with that. And then there's actually, I created a whole program with Python objects And then I created a form that talks to a Mongo database in Python. And that's purely if you want, there's nothing there we're going to do in class. I just wanted to show you that it was there if you wanted to look at it. Okay, so let's go back and just look at this a little bit. I'll bring back up the compass first. If I can find it. Is it? There it is. And maybe zoom up again. So, did you get the longer together on that?
That was fun.
All right, so let's make a database and we'll just add a couple of things. Again, this is just show and tell. We'll actually spend more structured time. So I'm going to do create database. And I'm just going to create, what do we want to name our database? TestDB, sounds good. So I'm going to create the database. Oh, I need to give a, I guess I need to do, TestDB should be fine, but I think I need to give it a collection name too. So let's say test collection. All right, so I created the TestDB and I gave it a collection called test collection. So if I look at that, it tells me that I can insert a document, right? Or I can do a search, a filter. There's nothing in it. So I'm going to show you real quickly. I'll do an insert document. And it gives me this sort of, it gives me an object ID, whether I want it or not. And then I'm going to do, what do we want? Test name. And then I'm going to tab. And what is my test name? First test. And then I'm going to tab and test date, tab. And I'm just going to enter a date. Let's do, what is 2018? Today is the 20, it's 2/28. Is that how it goes?
Mm-hmm.
And you can over here, there is a thing where you can change data types. Notice it changed that altogether. I changed it to date. And is there anything else I want to do here? test description. Testy, I guess. So I'm going to do insert, and it puts it there, right? And you can do this. So this is one of the ways you can enter data, and it might be easier. That's pretty small. Maybe I need to zoom up a little more. Full 200 zoom. All right. I'm going to also go to, is it open still? So on this one, this is the command. I'm going to say use, how did was it test DB with a capital DB? It was a capital D, right? Was it a capital T?
Are you just in Mongo?
Yeah, this is the Mongo one. That's right. One of the things that's a little bit weird and can drive you crazy is it'll say it's switched to whatever, whether it exists or not. And if it doesn't exist, it creates it at that moment when you say use it. So you can have a lot of databases that aren't quite what you thought they were. And it is case sensitive. So I'm going to do DB, which is the current context. So it's test DB. And it was test collection. And I know I did that all lowercase. And I'm going to do .find. And I'm also going to do .pretty, which will make it show up a little differently. So this is the way it looks here. And notice here it's got the curly braces and it's got the commas. This one is properly formed as a JSON object. In the, whatever that is, the compass, it's not, it doesn't show the curly braces and the pretty makes it show like this instead of all in one line.
My date in this shows up different than I entered it.
As a different date, or
Yeah, so I put it shows up as 0301, but in here in my object it shows up as 228.
is mine say 301? No, mine says 228. I have no idea. What? It might be a machine, but it shouldn't have. I'm not sure if it should have. Time is 8. That isn't true.
Mine is
That's a 0.
Yeah,
yeah.
which is what it should be.
Oh, maybe mine rounded up to the next day because I put it in as 0228 1600, and then now I get 0301 at like 00, so at midnight.
That's strange, though. It shouldn't have necessarily changed it. But it is interesting. Anyway, so this gives you sort of a feel for what these are. It's a very different world, you know, and you could insert a second document. So let's do the same fields. They don't have to have the same fields. As I said, I'll show you this later. I was trying to look at what my fields were. So test name, right? So I'm going to say second test. And then I'll tab, and it was test date. And I did, so it didn't do it in the same order though, did it? 2018, 228, and if I change that to date, now it, I have no idea what it's doing.
Maybe it thinks it's a leap year.
Or it's going to, there might be something with Greenwich time, or the 7 might be an offset.
I changed it to the 27th.
Huh,
Mine did that too initially. I changed it back.
I have no idea. All right, so the last thing I'm going to do is test description. And so the other one was testy. This is a test. All right, so I'm going to insert again. And then I just wanted to show you a quick query. So notice they've got field value here. If I were to do, I have to type it right. Let's say test, wow, it's haven't given me pains. I'm probably going to default to, it's not letting me type things. I have no idea what it's doing there. So we have 2 values there. Let's see.
And I typed it in between the brackets and I got the right one.
So if I go in here, so we want like, let's do test name, colon, and what I want is, let's just say second test. And if I do a find here, notice it only shows the second test. The queries themselves are in JSON form.
But it shows you all the things that are listed with. So you use the filter to filter the documents.
Right, and you could filter, you could actually filter what you want to see also. If I wanted to see just the name, I don't know if doing it in here is just so weird. So I am going to do, I don't know if it'll let me do this, comma. No, I don't want that. All right, well, let's do it. I want an opening one. And I want, I only want to see the test description. And I'm going to do a :1. And then I'm going to do at ID :0, so I don't see it, except it didn't let me type that. Now, theoretically, that will, no, it doesn't like it. What is it not like?
It gave you 2 closing brackets.
Well, it gave me 2 opening ones too, which I don't think I need. Yeah, then it's okay. Except it didn't give me anything. I'm going to go here, and I'm going to do DB test collection. Dot find. See if that works. Yeah, see, that worked. Worked there, it didn't work in the other one. It only returned what I wanted to see, the test description. That was the only field I wanted to see. Why it works there and not in the other? See, I'm thinking that I'm not going to like.
How'd you get that to paste?
I right-clicked at the prompt I don't know if that did it work.
Oh. Yeah. Yes, it did.
What?
After the closing, you said big closing this?
Oh, I just pressed enter.
So that's the,
It's a parentheses, yeah. One of the problems with the command line is just typing. I mean, when you make a mistake, it's harder to fix. But I'm thinking I'm going to like the command line better than I will play over the weekend with the compass and see if I can figure out its ins and outs. But I know the command line on this, and it works pretty well. So that's sort of the overview. We'll start actually working on an actual database and talking about how you would do that starting Monday. And we'll start with the group thing again to design what do you think the database would look like and what the collections would look like. And it's wide open with this actually. And then we'll build it again with a few records. And then we'll do a few queries. They'll be very different. I mean, the process is sort of the same, but it'll look a lot different because of the nature of these NoSQL databases. So, questions? I mean, I don't expect you to have a grasp of this yet. We just looked at it. If something, if you want to play with it over the weekend, you
What
could.
exactly is that query like? the latest.
So what it's doing is, I'm saying we're looking, this is the criteria. This is like the where clause.
Yeah.
So we're saying we want the value, this is the key. The key is test name, and we want the value that equals second test. The second set of parentheses is what do we want to, which fields do we want to see returned? I'm saying I only want to see the test description. And the thing is, and one is Boolean. Yes, I want to see that. All right, and the others are assumed to be 0. The only reason I had to do an ID 0 here is that the ID is always assumed yes unless you explicitly say no. So if I take that out, and close the curly brace, it works, but I get the ID as well.
Gotcha.
One of the things that I might try to do also, if we use the command line, is I'll try to give you some shortcuts. Like the up arrow repeats the previous line. And down arrow takes that away. It is possible to cut and paste in here to do some things. But as I said, I will play with the compass to see if I can figure out how. I'm sure you can do the same thing there. I just don't know what the structure of it is.
are you doing all of those in the Mongo?
The Mongo, not the MongoD.
What's the MongoD? Just
The MongoD is just the server. It's running the process. It's running the actual database. The other thing I will show you real quickly before, and I'm going to close these things out, but when you close the MongoD, you are shutting off the server. So if I were to try to do new things here, it would tell me I'm not connected anymore, I think. We did the data. I just wanted to show you. If I go into data now and into DB, see all these files in here? And if these are like the data files. And there's diagnostic data. And so it's given us some, this is all in DB. So data DB, all our data files in there. And if you don't make those folders, it fails, and I do not know why. So I'm going to kill the video now. You guys can finish up, you can play, or you can finish up on the